Okay. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the Sebastian River Area Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum. I'm Beth Mitchell. I'm the president of the chamber and I'm here on behalf of our board of directors. Before we begin the forum, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We would like to welcome all of our participants tonight. Thank you for being here. And we'd also like to thank the Sebastian City Council for providing us this opportunity to hold the forum in council chambers and to telecast on television on Channel 25. We also want to thank the city staff. Year after year, they show up and help us with putting this together, and we couldn't do it without them. The forum will be available to the general public on the City of Sebastian website and at the Chamber's website as well at sebastianchamber.com. The forum is sponsored by the Sebastian River Area Chamber of Commerce, and just so you know, next year we are celebrating our 60th anniversary. It's another example, this forum, of the Chamber's continuing service to our community by providing an opportunity for an exchange of information for the benefit of the voters. We've been holding these forums for many years now. The Legislative Government Affairs Committee endeavors to present a fair, neutral, and unbiased opportunity for the candidates for City of Sebastian Council to respond to current issues of concern to the voters and businesses in the City of Sebastian. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate in any election. However, the Chamber does advocate for businesses in our community on issues that may impact free commerce, and we work towards successful businesses and a vibrant economy. The City of Sebastian election will be held on November 7th of this year. Absentee ballots have been mailed. There are 3 council positions open for 2-year terms, and there are 4 candidates. And for the public, as voters, you will be choosing 3 of those candidates in total. Before we begin, I'd like to ask the members of the audience to please mute your phones and hold your applause. We ask the candidates to be mindful of the time and to stay within the time parameters when responding to the questions. In the event that a candidate exceeds the time limits, they may forfeit their next question. Now I'd like to introduce to you our committee. Michael Kent from the United Way. He will also be our timekeeper. Tim Knudsen from Florida City Gas. Thank you, Tim. Ben Moffitt, Acalina Bank, served as our chair this year. Kevin Rowland from Napier Rowland, LLC. And of course, Teresa Toll, Bay Street Pharmacy, and a former chair of the chamber. She will be our moderator. Now, I'd like to introduce the candidates to the public, and I'll do that alphabetically. Mr. Damian Gilliam, Mr. Albert Iovino, Councilwoman Linda Kenshin, and Mayor and Council Member Bob McPartlin. Welcome, and thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Now I'd like to introduce Ms. Teresa Toll and bring her to the podium. So please help me welcome Teresa.
Thank you, Beth. I would now like to explain to each of you the format for this forum. It will be divided into 3 sections. The first section is for opening statements from each of the candidates. Each opening statement may not exceed 3 minutes. Typically, most candidates use their opening statement to introduce themselves to the voters and to the viewing public. The second section of the forum will be the question and answer section. Each candidate will have an opportunity to respond to random questions posed by the moderator. That would be me. A question will be directed to a particular candidate, and the candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. Then the remaining 3 candidates will have up to 1 minute to rebut the answer or to give their own answer. In addition, there will be 1 identical question at the end that will be asked of each candidate. Please note the questions were written by the members of the Chamber LGA Committee, and 3 questions were randomly assigned to each of the 4 candidates. So tonight, as the candidates arrived, they drew a number to determine which questions would be assigned to them. I would now ask each of the candidates to hold up their numbers so we can record them and determine the order of questions. Okay, so Mr. Gilliams is candidate number 2, Ms. Kenshin is candidate number 3, Mr. McPartland, candidate number 4, and Mr. Iovino, candidate number 1. Thank you very much. And the final section tonight will be for closing comments and for wrap-up. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide closing remarks. Typically, most candidates use their closing statement to summarize their positions on issues of concern or to comment or clarify issues that they have not previously addressed. Candidates, your discussion will be civil and directed to the public and not to each other. Personal questions or comments directed to another candidate are not permitted. We reserve the right to terminate your opening statement, your closing statement, or discussion or comments about a topic if you become uncivil or unprofessional. Before we begin, are there any questions about this format? Okay, seeing none, we will begin with our opening statement from the candidates, and we are going to do these in alphabetical order. So, Mr. Damian Gilliam, you may present your opening statement. 3 minutes. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank the Chamber, Beth Mitchell, for having this. I want to commend the candidates also for being here. This is not an easy task. I think I know each one of them personally, and I think I can get along with all of them. So I want to also thank the audience that's out tonight here in the facility, as well as the people at home. Tonight, I want to lay out why I should be elected to the City Council. What are my qualifications? What's my vision for this community? And how I can contribute as a team player and build a consensus up here. I've worked with the city for many years. I started out as the chairman of code enforcement. I chaired that committee for many years. Loved it, enjoyed it. Went on to the CRA committee, worked there, did that for a few years. I've also just completed the Sebastian Citizens Police Academy. It's a 12-week course. And I got to learn the inner workings of our police department, which is the biggest part of our budget. It's about $5.2 million. And I got to see how they operate, as well as the FBI, the DEA. So I thought that was an eye-opener. As well as I've done things in the community as far as Exchange Club, Property Owners Association, the Elks, the Little League. I love this community. I have 3 beautiful kids. My 2 kids are engineers that are graduated from the University of Florida, married to my beautiful wife, Bonnie, for 31 years. My 3rd child's going to be an engineer. So my line of prior planning, preventing poor performances, is important to me. I plan for 5, 10, 20 years like I did with my kids to make sure that they'll be successful. They're happy to come home to visit for the holidays. But I'm looking forward to this evening's debate. You can get most of my information on votegilliams.com. I did a very elaborate website. It's tied to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I want to be considered the technology candidate, as well as a good team player. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, candidate number 2. I'm sorry, I'm in alphabetical order, I apologize. So Mr. Iovino, Albert Iovino, you may do your opening statement.
Hi, thank you, and I'd just like to thank the Chamber for inviting me here as well, and good luck to everybody. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I'm kind of a newer face of the community in regards to this type of event. I am originally from Buffalo, New York, and moved up into this community in 2002. I started in South Florida, believe it or not. Those of you that don't recognize me, I am a certified police officer, which means that I spent 500 and some odd hours in a law enforcement academy, firefighter, paramedic, and I have been an emergency room nurse here locally for Sebastian River Medical Center and for Indian River Medical Center as well. I did spend a good portion of my police career also working as a sergeant in charge of the traffic motor unit for Indian River County Sheriff's Office. So I'm very, very familiar with this community, the roadways, the way that things go. I've been involved in this community in many different aspects that some of these folks up here don't have the opportunity to be involved in, and that would be patrolling after disasters like Hurricane Jean and Francis and car accidents and other things like that. Fortunate for me, I've had a really good opportunity to develop a lot of business and management along the way via my law enforcement career. I just recently came back from a 6-month school called the Southern Police Institute, which is for command level officers in Broward County, and where I did a lot of budgeting and management work. I also have some FBI classes underneath my belt as well. And I think that it's going to be my extensive history in public service, including management of budgets and community relations, and my nursing experience and my firefighting experience, that's going to bring a different twist to the city council. In times where we don't have a great working rapport with our local public safety and the community, as via the news and things that have happened over the years, I think that I'm going to be a good piece to fit in between and explain to the community and give them a better understanding of why our law enforcement community does a lot of the things the way that we do, and as well as via budget. I mean, there's a lot of things in the budget that law enforcement wise that people might not understand. And if I believe correctly, I think the police department takes up about $3.7 million of our budget. And that's a lot of money, and when you don't understand why things are being purchased for what and how they're being purchased, it can become frustrating. But I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Linda Kenshin, you may do your opening statement, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the Chamber for having us tonight. I have been a resident of Sebastian since 1979. I was on the City Council in 1984, and when that term expired, I immediately applied for a job with the City of Sebastian Public Works Department, where I stayed for the last 30 years. When I retired last January, I ran for City Council again and was elected, so I am an incumbent running again this year. My concern for running was I felt that I had the knowledge of the city's day-to-day operations, having worked here for over 30 years, giving me the experience, and I also wanted to see the city continue to going in the right direction, both fiscally responsibly and serving its citizens with a level of service that doesn't break down. I love the Indian River Lagoon. I want to work to try and help get that cleaned up and in a better place. We're doing a lot of good things. This year, the City Council was able to reduce taxes for the first time in a lot of years. I'm very happy with the way the city's moving. We're moving in the right direction. We don't have any skyscrapers, and I don't expect us to ever have any skyscrapers. I want to keep the riverfront open and beautiful for the residents who walk there every day, I being one of those. And I just hope that you will go out on November 7th and vote for the best 3 of us that you think can do the best job for you and take care of all of the residents of Sebastian. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final opening statement from Mayor Bob McPartlin. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Teresa. And thank you, Chamber, for having this event tonight. I guess all I can say is it's about service and service to the community. My parents instilled that in me when I was a very young child. And then when I was 18, my mother called the Army and sent me over there. And I got involved in explosive ordnance disposal, which was the Army's bomb squad. I wound up in Sebastian in 2000, and I went to work with the Department of Children and Families, starting out as a child protective investigator, investigating child abuse. Then I went to work at the Child Advocacy Center, which only investigates the worst kinds of child abuse: fractured skulls, broken bones, sexual abuse, and child abuse. I became a supervisor. Then I came down to the 4-county area here and led the investigations for the 4 counties. Now I'm the Community Development Administrator for the Department of Children and Families. I think what it takes to be on the City Council is critical thinking. You need to have the ability to consume a large amount of information and make reasonable decisions. I've been on the council since 2011. I've enjoyed my time here. I'm involved in the community in so many different aspects. I'm a member of the Indian River Executive Roundtable, the St. Lucie County Roundtable, the Okeechobee Roundtable. I've been involved in poverty forums in Indian River County as well as St. Lucie County. I'm chairman of the Transportation Committee for Indian River County. I just became recently a volunteer with the Visiting Nurses Association because they have a specific program that once a person in hospice is identified as a veteran, you go out, you spend time with the individual and with the family. And they ask me for a couple hours a month, but the joy that I get back from service to others is so critical. And I mean, it just keeps me going. We just finished up the Department of Children and Families through October 6th through October 10th. We did the disaster food stamp program in Indian River, Okeechobee, Martin, and St. Lucie County. And that was for people who are not normally on food stamps. It was based on their income and then take into account the expenses they incurred from relocation or whatever. And what we did at the Indian River Fairgrounds, we had 50,000 people come through the door, and the economic impact on the county of Indian River was in excess of $10 million. So I enjoy being up here on City Council. I get so much more. I'm always at every meeting, always do my homework, and my phone is always on, my email is always on, return every phone call, and just thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the opening statements. And at this time, we are going to go into the full round of questions. And remember, each chosen candidate will have 2 minutes to respond, and the remaining candidates will have 1 minute each to either rebut or have a separate answer. So we're going to go now in numerical order based on the numbers that were chosen. So Mr. Iovino, you are first. So your first question. A review of occupational licenses in Sebastian has shown that business growth has plateaued over the past couple of years. Does this concern you? And if so, what would you propose to do about it?
And can you just repeat the last part, the first part of the question?
Sure.
Review of occupational licenses concerning.
So occupational licenses have plateaued. Is that a concern to you? And if so, what would you propose to do about it?
Absolutely, it is. I mean, those are people that make up the bread and butter of the city of Sebastian. And if we're not drawing people to the city to work and open businesses here, then that's a problem. I don't envision Sebastian being this huge metropolitan type area. Like I said, I lived in Broward County for many years before I moved here, and as Councilwoman Kitchen said, we don't have any skyscrapers, and I love that about this city, but we still have to look at the future and bringing business here and supporting them in every way that we can, and I would continue to work towards working with small business and bringing them into the city, and maybe even lowering some of our restrictions that we have in regards to that. I think that we have, we have a general set of rules and guidelines. I mean, landscaping being one of them that we put on businesses. And to give an example, Tire Kingdom, there's an example. They had this huge requirement of all these landscaping, and which far exceeds anything that they had in requirements in regards to the county. And I think that in some ways is a deterrent to bringing business into the city. So I would work on things like that to draw business in and not make it as hard to start a business here or to possess a licensing.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Gilliam's a response or an answer to that question, which is occupational licenses have plateaued over the past couple of years. Is that a concern to you, and what would you propose to do about it? And you have 1 minute to
Well,
respond.
first thing, I noticed going through the budget, the building department has been ciphering the occupational licensing money. So we finally got that straightened out with the city manager. That money's now being redirected back to the general fund. And in reality, it should be directed to the businesses of the community. But I hope eventually, if I get a seat up here, I'm going to bring that up. We're talking about $750,000 over 10 years. That was done when we just finished the hurricanes. Real quickly, the land development code needs to be reviewed. You got to make it easier for these businesses to open up a business. The procedures have to be fast-tracked. Permits have to be fast-tracked. You have to work with the economic development plan that you guys put on the shelf that's been sitting and collecting dust. Got to work with the state of Florida's economic development. Got to work with Brevard County and Indian River County. They have economic development. We need to brainstorm. We need to be smart about it. We need to have a plan. We need to measure our performances. And if they don't meet the criteria, then we need to fix it, change it, and set new goals. That's how I would address that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kenshin, your response?
Yeah, ever since I was elected to the council last year, I got a copy of our current occupational and environmental plan. And the economic development plan is been there for a while. It does need a little bit of work. I've been reviewing it page by page, and I'm hoping to go over to the chamber and have them look at a copy of it and see what their suggestions are, and then get with other people in the city who helped work on the original economic development plan and see what we need to change to bring these businesses back.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McPartlin?
Thank you. Great question. Of course, small business is what drives the economy. I think one of the greatest underutilized things that we have here in the city is the college, which sits right next door. They have the small business administration. They have an advisor in there that can assist small businesses on not only starting and establishing a business, but if they want to grow, and they can help you with a model plan. And of course, the city, in addition, making it easier for businesses to open up and grow, because again, they're the ones who are the backbone of the economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mr. Iovino, your second question. Again, you have 2 minutes. Describe your role as a council member and how you will interact with city employees.
So I don't believe that I'm any different than anybody else. When I get elected, I'm going to represent the city to the best of my ability because that's what I've been elected to do. I don't think that that gives me any special privileges over anybody else. Can you repeat the second part of the question for me, please?
As a city council member, how would you interact with city employees?
In my career, I've had the opportunity to manage up to 24 employees at one time, and I don't treat them or do anything different to them than anything that I wouldn't do myself. I believe that true leadership comes from leading from behind, not in front, and that's exactly how I would behave as a city council person.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Gilliam, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, that's not
Okay.
necessary.
1
First of
minute.
all, I wouldn't be interacting with the city employees. That would not be my function. I would be up here setting policy. That would be the function of the city manager. According to our charter, we only interact with the charter members, the city attorney, the city clerk, and the city manager. So that would not be my area. I think that would be a big mistake. That could cause a lot of problems with the city manager, and I would not be looking forward to doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kenshin?
Yeah, as a former city employee, I know most of them by name, so I would continue to be friendly with them, but if they have a specific question for me, I would answer it. However, I take my questions and concerns to the city manager, and he, in turn, speaks to the department head and gets the situation taken care of that way.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McPartlin?
My role as a council member is, again, like Mr. Gilliam said, to set policy up here. As far as, I speak to Mr. Griffin at least once every single day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. As far as my interaction with staff, I think I'm like the cheerleader. I'm out there to support them. We have the greatest law enforcement group. Again, I cover 4 counties, so I work with a lot of law enforcement. They're fantastic, and the city employees are fantastic. And the interactions I have with them is I support them, tell them what a great job they're doing. If I notice something's wrong, it's not my idea to direct them. I will let my concerns be known to the city manager, who it's his responsibility to take care of those. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Mr. Iovino, your last question of 2 minutes. Regarding city services for the residents, such as roads, sewer, parks, drainage, and stormwater retention, if elected, which of these items would be a priority for you and why?
Just the list one more time, please.
Sure. So roads, sewer, parks, drainage, and stormwater retention. Which would be a priority for you and why?
I would probably have to go with drainage, as I think that's probably one of our most pressing issues, and everybody can concur with that with the recent storm that we just had. It's been, I actually sat at a city council meeting last night, and I know that it's being addressed little by little, but it needs to be addressed further. That would be my number one choice, would be drainage.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Gilliam, your 1 minute response to that question.
They would probably be in the order of the environment, sewer, because of our main asset, the riverfront. And then second would be stormwater management. They've had some real major issues on getting things started with a master plan. Third would be the roads. And the roads, they just bought a new asphalt truck, but they can't seem to find asphalt from what I heard at the last meeting. So I'm going to try to help them get that truck on the road 24/7, because if we save the roads, we won't have to redo the bases, which will cost us twice as much money. And then Parks and Recreation is a quality of life here, which is also very important. So all four of them are important, but I would do it in that order. And I would have a plan and execute that plan, and then if it doesn't work, check it, make an adjustment. Doesn't work, make another adjustment, but stay on it. Quarterly reports, make sure that we have everything running smooth.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kenshin, do you need me to repeat it?
No, I do
Okay.
not. I believe that roads and drainage would be at the top of my list. Having worked in that department for over 30 years, I know the problems that we have, and we need to get on them and stay on them in order to keep the residents happy and the water from standing in their yards. After that would be sewers along Indian River Drive and US 1 to keep the water from going into our lagoon. And I think we have some of the best parks in the world in our city, and I'm sure that everybody who comes here to visit would say the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. McPartlin?
Well, I would say we've taken care of all four, over the years. So number one, having to do with the lagoon, of course, the county runs the sewer system, but we have our grant program trying to get people hooked up from the septic to sewer. So I think that's number one. The roads and drainage kind of go hand in hand. If you don't have the drainage fixed, then it deteriorates the road. So we have put a lot of money into the drainage issues. We have gotten so much better over the last few years when rain comes down. And so continuing in with that aspect, and our roads are in pretty good shape. We have a couple of pockets throughout, but we are in the process of identifying those, getting those taken care of. And I think our parks are the best parks in the county, notwithstanding, but we always take the opportunity to look at them and make improvements along the line.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so now we're going to move to candidate number 2. So Mr. Damian Gilliam, you're going to have 3 questions. They will be 2 minutes each, and then we'll follow the same procedure. So your first question, Mr. Gilliam, what changes would you recommend to streamline the process of opening a new business in Sebastian?
When you first come to open a business in Sebastian, first people you deal with are planning and zoning, community development department. And, you would have to obviously look to see what type of business it is and how we can accommodate them. Streamlining comes in the application form and making sure that we can get them from point A to point B without any hassles with pulling building permits. Being able to direct them in an area, a zoning area, where they will be successful, where they're not going to open up and then close. So the streamlining purpose, it starts at the community development department. And it should also be worked hand in hand with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that it's a perfect fit and that we can assist them also in getting them the workers that they need, either through the college or through the community.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kenshin.
As far as streamlining the process, I think our community development department does a very good job working with residents that want to open new businesses. I would like to see some changes to our landscape ordinance because I think it's very restrictive. I think we could cut back on that a little bit to make it easier on the developers when they come into the city. And I'd like to see maybe some kind of a tax break when they get their first business license so they can get going on a better even keel with their new business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPartlin.
I guess, again, it falls onto the Community Development Department. You know, we just hired a brand-new Community Development Administrator. She comes with a fine resume. She's got about a month on the job. And getting with her and making sure she builds a relationship with the Chamber, because the Chamber should know that the problems that new businesses are facing in opening it up, and we can have some dialogue between the two, and how can we make things better? Because all we want to do is be an open door, try and assist people, make sure they follow the regulations, and of course, try and see them be as successful as they can.
Okay. And Mr. Iovino.
As I said earlier, I think the landscape ordinance needs to be less restrictive. It seems to be an issue with a lot of the businesses coming here, i.e. Tire Kingdom being one of them. And then our community development, and I forget her name from the top of my head, but she did just get here, and again, I know is starting as a manager over a new department, it takes time to get your feet wet and kind of see the inner workings and what have you, and I would give her some time to do what she needs to do and then see how she does and goes from there.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Gilliam, this is your second question. It's a little bit long, so if you need me to repeat it, I'll be happy to do that. There's a proposed state constitutional amendment that's going to be on the ballot in 2018 that would increase Homestead Exemption. If it passes, it will reduce the ad valorem revenue collected from residents. The result may be an increase in taxes to the business community. Are you in favor of this proposed constitutional amendment? And if so, how would you fill the shortfall in revenue for the city of Sebastian?
I'm going to be straight up with you. I have not read the amendment.
Okay.
I heard something of it. I know it falls into a yearly thing where it's $25,000 per year, and but I would never be for raising taxes on businesses, especially when we have so many vacancies in this community as it stands now. We need to find ways to help businesses, but I know that the homestead does help people out.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a lot of senior citizens in this community that are on fixed incomes. When they get an increase in their Social Security, it's only 1.2% or 1.8%, when there's other businesses that are given 3% for cost of living and then another 3% for merit. So I would be very skeptical. I would need to read the fine print, and I'm pretty good at reading the fine print, being a real estate broker and looking over contracts. So. But I would get up to speed on it, without a doubt.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ms. Kenshin.
I'm aware of this amendment. It should take, 2 years to really get up to speed. It is going to cause a great deficit in our tax base. However, I think that the city is in a great financial state and that we could find alternate ways to complete our projects, even if we have to do them in phases, to offset the monies that we're not getting to cover those things. I don't see that we may or may not have to go back to furlough days. We did that a while back, and the employees did it with grace and with a great pleasure. Well, not great pleasure, but they didn't complain a lot about it, and they stuck in there with us, and we brought them back, and we're doing great now, and I'm sure they'll do the same again.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPartlin.
Oh, this is a great question. The homestead exemption, everybody's going to vote for, but the impact for the state of Florida is going to be $640 million for the counties and local municipalities. For Indian River County, they're going to see $4 million less each and every year in their annual budget. For the city of Sebastian, it's going to be $500,000. You talk to some of the state legislators, they're like, oh, you just raised the millage rate. But legally, we can't raise it to make it that way. It's going to be an impact on business because they're going to be the ones that are paying for it. As well as I'm involved in a nonprofit community, that's going to involve with the Children's Services Council, where we petitioned the county commission, and we got an increase from $600,000 to $1.2 million to support nonprofits who are doing outstanding work. And when the county's got to cut $4 million, where do you think it's going to come from? From Children's Services, which the state has already cut substantially. So I'm not in favor of increasing the homestead.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Iavino?
I'm definitely not for it. Clearly, if you look at the budget that was just passed, if it's not broke, then we don't fix it, and that's exactly where we're at. Fortunate, I had the opportunity, like I said recently, to play with about a $280 million budget and was ordered to shave out about $800,000 off of that budget in this workshop that I was in. And there are ways to find money and make the money work via grants or other things like the discretionary sales tax fund, whatever may be, but I'm definitely not for it, nor the impact that it would cause against businesses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Gilliam's your last 2-minute question. Describe your thoughts on the recruitment and selection process for a charter officer.
It's a great question, being that we have the city attorney that we're going to be looking to do very shortly. Back in the day when we brought Bob Ginsberg here, I was part of that process, even though I was on that side, and I was standing at that podium and I said, hey, we have a hell of a person here that we really need to take a good look at and really consider him. And Bob turned out to be dynamite. I think that when you're dealing with a charter officer, you really have to put out the feelers through either professional organizations or through professional publications to make sure that we reach the best, the brightest, the smartest. And it's also putting together a financial package that's going to want to bring them here to Sebastian. I'm looking forward to being a part of that because I think the city attorney is a big, big part of this community, and we count on him for making and giving us good decisions and good advice. So I'm looking forward to that process, and that's how I would approach it.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to meet them, have a one-on-one privately so that each council member can get to meet with them and find out their thoughts that they wouldn't discuss in public, just to make sure we know who we're getting. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kenshin?
Yes, we are unfortunately in the process of replacing Mr. Ginsberg right now, and the council made a decision not to use outside companies for that search. We went out and notified the legal organizations that we're looking for a good attorney. I have seen some of those applications, and they are very good with a lot of experience. So I think once we get all of those applications in our hands, we're going to be able to find the person that we need to find. I can't say he'll be as good as Bob Ginsberg, but we'll do our best to find a good one and keep the city running in the way it should be running and keep us sitting up here doing the right things.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPartlin?
This is a very important decision. Having been in management for the last 12 years, I've hired I don't know how many countless people. I was around when Sally Mayo retired, and we were able to hire from within, and we got Jeanette Williams, which is a jewel. Mr. Ginsberg, we're in the process of hiring a new city attorney. That man was so humble and kind, and he brought so much knowledge, skills, and ability to this job. It was unbelievable. I also look, Mr. Griffin one day is going to leave the city, and hiring a new city manager is going to be so vitally important. I think it's about time the city looked into hiring an assistant city manager, because I would prefer to hire from within, because when you read through applications, everybody looks good on paper, but especially if they're from out of the area, you never know how they're going to respond to the situation, or it takes so much time to build relationships in the community. So it's a very involved process, and I look forward to it because I've been involved so long.
Thank you. Mr. Iovino.
As anybody in the law enforcement community or firefighter community can attest, we go through one of the strenuous processes to actually being hired and working as a law enforcement officer or firefighter. And one of the things that we do is we put them on a year probation. In the state of Florida, it's completely and totally legal, and I think that might be something that we need to look into in addition to having a interview process by the 5 council members as well, to just as you would as in a law enforcement interview. I've sat and I've interviewed in front of 5 or even 8 people before. I think it's a way to just get a lot of different questions out there and really get a good idea of how the person is, as well as, like some of the other constituents said, a really thorough background, personal references and what have you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Gilliam, thank you. Ms. Kenshin, so we are going on to your 3 2-minute questions. And your first one is, what is a reasonable amount of money to be held in reserves for the city of Sebastian? And what is a good example of a legitimate use of reserve money?
Well, recently we just had that item come before us. I think the amount of money that we have in reserves right now, which is $5 million, is a reasonable amount, because if we have back-to-back hurricanes, that money needs to be there to help us in order to fix everything that needs to be fixed, provided we don't get FEMA help, or we don't get insurance help, or we don't get anything else. Just because that money, just because FEMA says they're going to pay you, I went through the hurricanes in 2007 as a city employee, and 5 years later, they came back and did an audit to make sure that we didn't have to give money back to them because of that. So keeping that money in reserves is the best thing that we can do, and also it will help with the secondary homestead exemption if we should have that come hit us in 2 years when it's due. I would not want to see that money used for frivolous or unnecessary things. I think it needs to stay there in the case of true emergencies, and work for the citizens of Sebastian to make sure that whatever gets damaged or ruined, that we have the money to fix and repair quickly and without any problems.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPartlin, you want me to repeat it?
Sure. Thank you. $5 million is a reasonable amount of money to have in there. Once you crack a piggy bank open, money never goes back in there. And last year with Matthew, we had to lay out $1.4 million to restore the docks, and we're still waiting to be reimbursed by FEMA for that money. And again, like Ms. Kenshin reflected, you have to make sure every I is dotted and T is crossed, because sometimes they come back 5 years from now and they say you need to pay that money back. We didn't even have the estimate for debris removal this year, which we've laid out, and we're hoping to recover money from FEMA. So $5 million is a reasonable amount of money to keep in reserves, because you never know how many emergencies can happen, as well as we still might have another tropical storm come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Iovino.
I agree on the $5 million. I think a lot of people don't realize that we depend on the gas tax and sales tax fund as well during times of hurricane and tropical storms, and we lose those monies coming in, and it takes a big drop when we're impacted by a hurricane. And it seems that $5 million appears to be the magic number to keep us to where the city gets done what it needs to get done. And I also concur with FEMA taking forever to actually reimburse its folks, the city and the county. Being involved in that with the sheriff's office, it took us, I think, almost a year to get reimbursed on some of the monies as far as payroll and things go. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Gilliams.
I would look at it in a way of, what does the state require from municipalities? What is the policy that's set in the charter, and what's required? I'm pretty sure it's a percentage of the operating expenses, and I think that the city is above that. They're supposed to be somewhere around 3.5 million. They're keeping somewhere a little more than 5 million. So if they want to keep $5 million, then what we need to do is have a debate and talk about why we want to increase it, and then change the financial policy that's in the manual and make sure that we follow the guidelines that's set forth by the federal and state agencies to make sure that we don't get into a bad situation. It's always good to have more money, a rainy day fund. And I would get a storm committee started for hurricanes, meet twice a year, because there's a lot of other issues we really need to talk about so we can be prepared. There's going to be a big one, and it's going to be very shortly. We've just been missed by 2 of them, Matthew last year and Irma this year.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Kenshin, so your second question, in order to establish a millage rate, the level of services provided to the community must be considered. Which services would you be willing to reduce or eliminate to maintain or reduce the millage rate?
Having been a former employee, I actually would not be willing to reduce any services if I didn't have to, because I dealt with the residents on a day-to-day basis, and they need our services. I would say maybe I would reduce some services in the parks first before I would reduce services to the individual residences, and then take a look at other things that wouldn't make such a big impact on us. I definitely would not want to reduce any services that have to do with the safety of the residents in any way whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPartland, and I'm just going to read the question again. So the level.
I don't think I need the question again.
Okay.
I'm writing down as we go.
Okay.
You know, you talk about cutting services. You know what? We have a great level of service. And when you're talking about cutting services, I think I would be for raising the millage rate, because taxes are not that high. I lived in Sebastian since 2000, and I looked at my property tax bill for the last 17 years. And in 2004, I was spending $3,000 on county taxes. I was paying the city of Sebastian $400 a year. These past couple of years, I'm paying $224 for the city of Sebastian. I'm only paying $1,700 for the county. You can only cut so much to the bone. I mean, one of the things I said, we have a lot of great city toilets that are out there. Maybe we need to make them pay toilets, but I'm not in favor of cutting any services for the resident. You really need to look at possibly raising the millage rate. And the taxes have been so low in comparison to 2004 and what they pay around the country.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Iovino.
I'm never for raising the millage rate. I mean, it's part of the reason why I live here. I mean, you're talking, I came again, and I hate to keep making reference to South Florida, but I'm going to because I live there. And the taxes are astronomical. I mean, I think I was paying somewhere in the neighborhoods of around almost $4,000 a year for my property taxes in comparison to what I'm paying here in the city of Sebastian. I'm never for cutting services whatsoever. I mean, our police department and the service that we have with them is just, it's not for cutting. It's not for furloughs or anything else. I mean, the idea is to keep taxes low unless we absolutely, under any other circumstance, have to raise the millage rate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Gilliams.
You know, it's a tough question, because you do have people that are senior citizens that are on fixed incomes. And, you know, when you say, well, it's just a little money here, but then it's a little money there, and you're being taxed by all these different areas, and it adds up. So, you know, you have to have empathy for the seniors in this community. You know, when it comes to cutting services, I would probably look at cutting services maybe across the board on a percentage basis where it affects everybody. That's why I'm so interested in getting a Citizens Academy started here in this community like Brevard County has. You get so many volunteers that come in and donate time, and then we reward them in a way, maybe access to the golf course or VIP parking down at the riverfront or something. Get creative so that, and also the grant department. We're not getting our share of the grants. We're not working with the legislature, our delegation. We need to get more creative. We need to be a lot more smarter about it. And we wouldn't have to raise millage rates, and we wouldn't have to cut services. We would be working smart and have that money saved, put away for a rainy day. And if we want to increase that percentage of the operating courses, we can do it.
Okay, thank you. All right, and your last question, Ms. Kenshin, is what issues motivated you to run for this office, and what do you plan to accomplish during your term?
What do I think I accomplished during the term that I'm in or the coming up term?
What would you like to accomplish in the coming term?
Okay. Basically, the issues that I ran for was to make sure that we improve fiscal responsibility and keeping our taxes low, to ensure that the capital projects that we're putting in our 6-year plan or 5-year plan are prioritized properly and completed in a timely fashion, that we're not spending money unnecessarily on something that could wait. Also, drainage was a big issue for me. We've always had drainage problems in Sebastian, so infrastructure was a good reason for, one of the reasons why I ran. My commitment is to the future of Sebastian and keeping it quaint and somewhere people would like to come and spend their lives. So basically, I just want to keep Sebastian the way Sebastian is, a little old fishing village with 6 old grouches.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPartlin, 1 minute.
Oh, the issues that motivated me to run for office. When I first ran, I thought I could change the world. And then when you sit up here, you see that's not done. But what I look at is building community. There's a lot of community issues out there that the community can fulfill. You know, it's like people have gotten to an entitlement kind of phase. You know, we had issues at the dog park and everybody wanted all these additional things that they wanted a city to provide. And I'm like, you guys can get together and you can go find a Boy Scout who wants to do an Eagle Scout project if you want to build a bench or you want to do something along those lines. So I'm up here. My main thing is public safety, roads, trying to keep taxes as low as I can, but to build community and get people more involved, that the problems we're facing, especially with the opioid crisis, and try and combat them as a community. You can't look at the government to do everything.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Iovino.
What can I say that hasn't already been said? I am pro a lot of these things, including keeping taxes low, the lagoon, the working waterfront. As Bob mentioned, the growing opiate pandemic. That really has been mentioned at all during this election year, and I'm hoping that it gets mentioned more often. We start doing something more about it because it is becoming it is a pandemic, and it is becoming a national issue, even down to the local level. And last and most important, maintaining the culture, heritage, history, and quality of life that we have in Sebastian. I love living here, and I want to continue to promote that and work with my constituents to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Gilliam.
The issues that concern me, public safety, I got a copy of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement report for the city for the past 3 years. Crime is up. Burglaries are up. People having drug problems. We're getting people coming in from out of town. I'd like to see some more cameras put in like they do over at Indian River Shores that read license plates. It seems to be working. It's a deterrent. I'd like to see more neighborhood patrol, neighbors getting involved with their area to keep the cost down for the police department. I've been coming to these meetings for the past 8 years, and nothing's not getting done as far as the swales. They did quarter round. They spent millions of dollars. They dropped it. The canal walls, the crumbling. They did one side of the Highlands because there was a city council member who lived on the canal. But we're going to get a 40, 50-inch rain just like Houston got one day, and it's going to flood out the area, and people are going to be upset. And then we're going to have some liability on our hands. We took those canals from General Development in a deal when they went bankrupt, and we have an obligation. So
Okay,
I want to see
you.
it through. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, Ms. Kenshin, that concludes your round of 2-minute questions. And finally, we are going to go to Mayor Bob McPartlin for your 3 questions. Your first one is, what is the role of a city council member in economic development?
Role of a city council member in economic development.
That's correct.
I guess it's just to try and build relationships with other people. I wish I could make any business successful in there, but when an issue is brought to my attention, I point people in the right direction. I have taken the opportunity, because I cover 4 counties in my regular job, and this is a regular job too, building relationships with the state legislatures, be it Senator Mayfield, Representative Lee, Representative Harrell, Representative Magar, and trying to see what can be done from a global perspective, because I can't make businesses successful, but we try and make it as easy as possible to grow. Also building the relationship with Indian River State College. As I alluded to before, this Small Business Administration does so much. Nobody goes to the office and tries. If you think of an idea that you want to do to create a business, they have people in there that will help you build a business plan, as well as looking for grant opportunities that you can get, and especially if you're a minority. And if you have an existing business, they can take you to the next level. So my thing is to raise awareness about everything that is already out there. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. People can talk all they want, but it has to do with action and how you connect one person with another person. I'm considered either like a gnat who flies around and people try and slap me down, but I also look at the opportunity I have as like a bee who meets different people who can pollinate and make results happen. And that's what it is. People talk, but I actually build relationships with everybody that's out there, and people, because I know what I know what I don't know, but I have a connection with people that are in the know.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Iovino, 1 minute to respond, and what is the role of a city council member in economic development?
First, I'd like to comment real quick on the crime rate growth. Violent uniform crime reporting shows that there's been a 27% decrease with the city of Sebastian, and the index property crimes, burglaries, robberies, and what have you has also gone down 10%. So that's the correct information in regards to that. As far as economic growth and supporting them, I think, like I said earlier, we just need to be less restrictive on businesses and doing what we can to support bringing small business and growth within the city. I mean, and be inviting to them, not restrictive and say, well, you've got to do this and you've got to do that. Let's work with them, not against them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gilliams.
I got this paperwork from the chief of police, just so you know.
And,
Anyway,
and I did as well.
Could you repeat the question again?
Yes, sure.
Right here.
So, and I'm just going to remind you to direct comments to the public and not to one another. Thank you. So the role of the city council member in economic development, and you have 1 minute.
I think that working, first of all, with the Chamber of Commerce on a consensus basis with the council is critical. The Chamber should be put on the agenda probably every quarter to see what their wants and needs are and how we can assist them in creating economic development. Looking at the economic development plan that we have on the shelf that's sitting there just collecting dust is not doing us any good. So it's important to also work with the State of Florida Enterprise and Economic Development, as well as the county and Brevard County, being that they're right next door. They have a lot of businesses that are thriving up there, especially in the technology area. So I would look at it in that approach.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Kenshin.
I think the role of a city council member in economic development is very important. I believe that I would love to see every vacant storefront in Sebastian have a new business, whether it be a 3-person business or a mom and pop store. I think that's very important. I also think we need to work with the chamber, and we need to work with our community development department to streamline whatever needs to be done to get these businesses to Sebastian. We don't do a lot of advertising, and I think we should maybe start doing some of that. We could get people to come to Sebastian to retire, and I see a lot of cities that advertise about come here and spend your great life retirement. We have the best this and we have the best that. Well, I think Sebastian is the best place to go. I came down here in '79 when my parents retired because they loved it so much and they talked me into it. I came down here as a okay.
Thank you. All right, Mr. McPartland, your second question. What is your philosophy on compensation as it relates to the hiring and retention of talented employees?
Great question. I'm going through this with the Department of Children and Families. And again, it's not Mayor, it's not Mr., it's just Bob, please. And hiring and retaining employees is so vital. And I think, you know, we were trying to work out a situation a few council meetings ago about giving extraordinary employees a bump in pay. You know, not everybody deserves to get an increase in pay. You know, cost of living is one thing if it's in the budget, but I'm also not a believer in every kid gets a trophy either, because I grew up years ago. But exceptional employees need to be compensated because the retention of employees is vital to any organization. In the Department of Children and Families, we have 35% turnover in investigators because the job is so demanding that if they are just adequate, they can do any other job there is. So the same goes for our employees. We have phenomenal employees, not only in the public works and in administration, but our law enforcement. And sometimes they could go chase a job to a different department and get higher pay and less stress. So we really need to look at that policy of one, who we're hiring and how we can better retain them. Sometimes it's not always money. Sometimes it's just giving them the additional opportunity to grow, whether it be go to a leadership academy or something, continuing education for themselves, to not only improve their lives and their situation, but just everything overall. And again, is supporting them and also having the management in place that supports the frontline workers, because that is vital, because usually workers leave because of the supervisor they have. So also offering the same opportunities for the management level within the city so we can do a better job at retention.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Iovino, what is your philosophy on compensation as it relates to hiring and retention of talented employees?
I had the opportunity to actually go through this myself as an employee and even discuss it as a manager. I remember a story with an individual that said that even if he was paid $5,000 a year more, he would still do the same amount of work that he did prior to getting that raise. And I don't think that merit is really the way to go about it. I don't think a merit raise actually works. I think it has to be stringent hiring practices. I think we have to lean on our mid-managers and make sure that they're doing the right thing. They're saying to their people, hey, you're having a good job. There's personalization. They're tasking them to lead to actually move into their position, because that's what management and leadership is about. It's about, as you move up, you mentor your people to move up to where you are. And it's practices like that, I think, that are going to retain and get us good people for the city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gilliams.
I think if you want to retain good employees, first of all, you really need to know what the surrounding areas are paying as far as salary, benefits, compensation. You know, if you have turnover, in the end, it's going to cost the city a lot more money, because now you're retraining. So I think it's important that when hiring, take your time. We do not offer other benefits that we have here that we can to attract, like our golf course, given access to that. I know they've tried it before, but it wasn't looked after properly. So there are good ways of retaining good people. You just have to get a little creative. I'm the only business person up here that has a business in the community. I'm the only one, that if I get on council, will be the only businessman that has a business in this community, multiple businesses. So I think I have a head start on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Kenshin.
Yes, I believe that we need to also check with surrounding communities and make sure that we are in compliance with what other cities are offering for our employees. I also believe in getting them proper training, and if they want to accelerate, to help them pay for that training so that we can retain their services. However, sometimes that doesn't always work. I mean, we have had employees in the past who we've put through school, and then 30 days later they're gone. So you got to look at all the ups and downs with compensation and try the best to retain the best.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so the last question to Bob. And I have to say that these questions were randomly assigned, and I know I already said that, but you kind of stole the thunder on this
Is that
one.
good or bad? I don't know.
You somewhat already answered this question, so I'm going to read it anyway, but you answered it earlier. So even most businesses with smaller budgets than the City of Sebastian have a succession plan. The city does not have a plan. Do you support a formal succession plan for charter officers, and how do you propose that it be implemented?
Yes. Like I said before, I think it's about time that the city hired an assistant city manager, because Mr. Griffin does a phenomenal job, but he's only one person. He needs an assistant because Joe needs to be out in the community doing more. That way, if, God forbid, something happened to him, we have somebody who can step in on an interim basis that can take over. As far as for a city attorney, I don't think we need a full-time city attorney, so we wouldn't need an assistant necessarily. As far as Jeanette, who's the clerk, she has Kathy, who's in her office, who also does a phenomenal job. But I think it is about time that the city hired an assistant city manager. That way, if something should go wrong. But succession planning is always so vital, even though the police chief is not a charter officer, but also looking in that aspect when she decides one day she had enough or just retires, because she has done an unbelievable job over the past 30 years. But she has built a management team, and I am confident that there's somebody over there that can step up. You're even looking at it not just in a charter officer aspect, but you're also looking in public works. And Tim does an incredible job, and he is developing staff. And I know that's been one of Mr. Griffin's priorities over the last few years, is that the people that he has in place and making sure that the next level is ready to step up in the event something goes wrong. So I'm a firm believer in succession planning. It's vital to any organization. Otherwise, because if something happens, who's going to take over?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Iovino.
That's all I do is work for organizations that actually do just that. I mean, for the last 21 years that I've been in law enforcement, that's exactly what we do. We have assistant chiefs, we have acting sergeants, we have acting lieutenants. I myself was an acting sergeant for a while, as well as an acting lieutenant as a watch commander. And the way that I got there is I was mentored from management, and I was promoted and hired from within. And I think that maybe that's something the city needs to look at as well, that if we are going to do these things, do we have someone here that can be an acting city manager until we actually do hire another city manager, or do we have someone that can be an acting city manager that might be the person that we want to be city manager? I don't know, but those are things that we can look at, and I support that wholeheartedly, 110%, as well as maybe even going with a probationary period, because, you know, there are the few that do slip through the door and through the cracks and get in, and they don't work out the way that they need to be. So it gives us a little leeway in playing with hiring somebody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gilliam.
Yeah, I agree with the succession plan. I think actually having an assistant city manager, because Joe is getting to the point where he's putting a lot of time in and freeing up his time and having somebody ready to step up to the plate. But I would also not rule out looking outside the city as well. So I would look at both options. I'd be open-minded.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Kenshin.
Yes, I also agree in a succession plan. We had, actually our city clerk was the deputy city clerk before she was promoted, Jeanette, when Sally Mayo left. And Sally Mayo trained her phenomenal. And I know that when we had the mass retirements a couple years ago, there were not a lot of succession people to step right in and take all of our places. So they had to scramble a little bit, the city, to get up to speed. So yes, I'm in favor of that, not only for the charter officers, but for every department to have a successor to take over when the department head's not there.
Okay, thank you. So that's all of the questions for each of you, except for the last question, and it's identical. So all of you will have 2 minutes to answer, and I will go in the numerical order that you chose. So, Mr. Iovino, how have you given back to the community in the last 5 years? And I do want to state, I know some of you have covered this already in your opening statement, so you'll get a chance to say it again.
I actually am the chairman for the Disabilities Committee in regards to volunteer work. But I'm involved in the community in a very different aspect, as in, and even tonight I was at our national, community night out. It stems from National Night Out. I participate in these events. I'm in the community. I'm promoting law enforcement, public safety, fire safety, what have you, and it's something that I've done my whole career and I continue to do. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And it is 2 minutes, just so you know. Mr. Gilliams, 2 minutes. How have you given back to the community in the last 5 years?
I've did by working on the boards, coming to the meetings constantly. My involvement with the nonprofits would be the Elks Club, the Italian American Club, I am a member of the American Legions, Sons of American Legions, but I have not done much with them. I do sponsor tournaments for good benefits to my company. I try to get my son, he does community service as well. I think that's important. So I do it in different ways. I've donated money to the Sebastian Police Department Academy because I'm a big believer in the volunteerism that those guys do for the community. So I stop once in a while, have breakfast with them when they have a breakfast. They save this community over $250,000 a year in labor hours. So I do it in a lot of different ways. I love this community. I've been here over 30-something years now, and if I don't get up there, I will continue to do community service. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kenshin.
Well, I've been a city employee up until 2 years ago, so I really didn't have much time to go out and give back a little bit of my time, but I have been a volunteer for the Clam Bake Festival. I'm always there for all of the parades, the 4th of July parade, the Christmas parade, anything that needs to get done. I have volunteered for other organizations. I actually am working this year at the Clam Bake Festival, and when we have our Shrimp Festival, which is coming to Sebastian this year from Fellsmere, I'll be volunteering at that one as well. I don't have any problems volunteering and giving back. I think it's a great thing for me to do. It's a good way for me to keep in touch with the residents of Sebastian that I've worked with and talked to over the last 30 years, and I want to continue to work with them and talk with them and be with them and do whatever I can to help them.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McPartlin.
Bob, you
Bob,
forgot to
sorry,
use-
Bob.
You know, it kind of blurs for me a little bit between you talk, you know, because sometimes I don't know when I'm volunteering or when I'm not volunteering. But for the last 5 years, I have taught at the Sheriff's Citizens Academy. But of course, I'm exposing them at night to Department of Children and Families, trying to get more people to become involved, become foster parents, guardian ad litems, and mentors for kids. I have taught at the Sebastian Citizens Academy for the last 8 years, trying to do the same phenomenal thing. And what I get out of that is we wind up getting volunteers out of the Sebastian Citizens Academy who donate over 10,000 hours to the city, which is a savings because that's the equivalent of 5 full-time officers. Now, as far as volunteering, I lend my support to Safe Space, which is the domestic violence shelter on the Treasure Coast. They have their annual walk coming up. Walk a mile in her shoes in 4-inch stilettos. I plan on being out there Saturday morning, killing my feet. My involvement, I got involved with the VNA. As I said before, they have a special veterans program. When I came on board, they fell in love with the idea that I was the mayor, but of course that I was an Army veteran, because they only had one guy doing it for the whole county. And what they do is they got me involved in there, And I went down there, and the ceremony that we do is so wonderful. We give a pin. We give them a certificate honoring their service to their country. We give them these blankets that are made by these ladies. They're quilted red, white, and blue blankets, as well as we give them a bear that's dressed in a uniform of the branch of service that they're in. And when you press the paw, it sings basically the hymn of that branch of service. And I was just visiting a guy yesterday who's in hospice. His whole family came down, and he was despondent. But when I pressed the paw of that bear, his eyes lit up, and there wasn't a dry room in the house. And the joy that I got back, I'm like, I'm not volunteering. This was special.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we're up to closing statements. So each of you will have 2 minutes to make your closing statement. And I'll just remind you that you can use your closing statement to address or clarify any issue that might have been raised that you feel like you didn't get to address, or just an opportunity to ask the public to vote for you or to explain any other matter. And we are going to go in alphabetical order as we started. So Mr. Damian Gilliam, you may close. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Teresa. I want to thank the Chamber for bringing on this event. I want to thank the candidates as well for being very professional. I enjoyed it. I want the community to think about, when they go in to vote, qualifications. I've served on many boards. I've come to many meetings. I'm involved with the community. I'm the only business person here. The rest are government employees. I want you to look at it in a different capacity. If you go to my website, vote Gilliams, GILLIAMS.com, there'll be a lot of other information about myself, about my family, who I am. There's a lot of false things that are out there. People don't want to talk about the issues. My telephone number is 772-713-5071. It's my cell phone. If there's something out there that you want to talk to me about, I do return phone calls. There's a lot of nasty things that people are putting out there that's not accurate, and I want you to be able to call me so I can challenge it. I want to thank the community at home. Please get out and vote. This is a midterm election where not a lot of people come out to vote. Bring your friends and family. I'd like to extend a challenge, the city of Sebastian, to turn out the most voters compared to all the other municipalities, and I'd like to work on that. And you don't have to vote for Damian. Just get out and vote and exercise your right. If you don't vote, then you don't have the right to complain. There are people, men and women in uniform, fighting for freedom and the right to vote. Thank you. Look at my sign: peace, love, and God bless. That's what we need in the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Albert Iovino.
Thank you, and I'd like to say thank you to the Chamber and everybody that's running. I got to say, this is not an easy thing to do, to get up here and speak, and I'm glad that I'm a part of it. And I just want to say that I've put my whole heart and soul into this, and that's exactly what I'm going to do when I become a council person for the city of Sebastian. It's how I work. It's my ethic. It's what my morals are based on, and I just want to say that I am a problem solver, and I feel that problems are challenges. I'm going to work tirelessly to address the issues that are put before me in a way that benefits all the members of the community. And that's what it's about, folks. It's about me representing you and working for you and issues and things that need to be taken care of and addressed at this level. And I think that it takes effective leadership and willingness to make decisions to benefit the whole community. And I feel that I'm capable of making these decisions. As Mr. Gilliam said, I implore you to look at each candidate heavily. My background is transparent. I work in law enforcement. Everything is public record. You can go into my background right now between the Sheriff's Office and Indian River Shores and see that I've received the Medal of Honor, almost 40 commendations for my service and the way that I treat people, my deportment, the way that I handle myself. I treat people like I want to be treated, and I'm not going to do that any less than I do every day at work up here. And I just thank you for the opportunity to allow me to be up here and represent the city to the best of my ability. And vote for me come November 7th. You can go to www.votealbertiovino.com. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Linda Kenshin?
I'd like to thank the Chamber again for having us tonight. I appreciate these council forums. We become very well-informed of the issues, and we have to give them out to you. I feel that I'm one of the best candidates for this seat because I have knowledge of the day-to-day operations of the city, budgets, public works, parks, both as a former employee and as a former city councilwoman, bringing both sides of that knowledge to the table. My commitment will always be to keeping Sebastian, to the future of Sebastian, and keeping it quaint and somewhere people would always like to come and spend their lives, whether it be retired or family-oriented. I'm not affiliated with any special interest groups, and I will work for and with all the residents and the businesses. In my position with the city, I had the opportunity to speak with the residents every day, both in person and on the phone. They gave me a great insight into what they liked and disliked and what they wanted and what they didn't want for Sebastian. So get out on November 7th and vote. Hopefully I'll be one of the people you choose, but if not, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mayor Bob McParland.
Right. Thank you. We'll get it right once a year. You know, first off, I want to thank the Chamber for holding this event. Secondly, I want to thank the city. The city has done more for me. They've always made me look good up here. I mean, they work so hard and sometimes under trying circumstances. Last, I want to thank my children. My children wanted me to run. They support me what I do. And whenever I go out to events, I always bring the kids with me to teach them a sense of service. I have enjoyed my time up here. I think my qualifications speak for themselves. You can feel free, Google my name, see all the stories that are out there. And sure, there's probably some unkind stories out there too, because you can never make people happy all of the time. My phone numbers are 772-708-2900, which I always put out there, as well as my city cell phone, 772-453-8540. You call me, I always respond to calls. I always respond to emails. I've had a tremendous opportunity up here to be able to affect a lot of change in the city. You know, I hear things about the city. The city has done a remarkable job over the last few years. Drainage has improved. The budget has been solid. We stopped the furloughs. We continue going forward. What we need on this council is people who have critical thinking skills, are able to play well in the sandbox with others, and because at the end of the day, vote doesn't go in your favor, you're able to shrug it off, and the next vote comes along, and you can get through the moment. Don't get caught up in the ideas. Don't get caught about people saying they're going to do this, do that. Look at results of what people have gotten done. I couldn't be more proud of this city than anyone. They do a remarkable job. Mr. Griffin did fantastic, and I couldn't say it without Miss Coy finished up her term, and nobody ever taught me more than Miss Coy, and I appreciate her service.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so this concludes our final segment of the 2017 Sebastian City Council Candidates Forum. The Chamber and the LGA Committee thank all the candidates for their participation and for the way that you've conducted yourselves this evening. We also want to thank the voters for viewing this forum and for listening to the candidates. And I do urge the voters to carefully and thoughtfully consider each candidate's position on the issues that are important to you before voting. Please remember that there is no early voting in this election and that Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th, 2017. And I will reiterate what the candidates have, that we should vote. I like the challenge of encouraging the Sebastian residents to get out and vote and show that they believe in this community. So with that, we will conclude this evening's forum. Have a good evening.
Thank you.